The proximity alarm pulsed, 34 beats per minute, close enough to a resting human heart that Deianira's body kept trying to sync with it and failing. She stood at the navigation console with both hands braced on either side of the display. The amber emergency strips cast everything in sick yellow light. Her skin looked jaundiced. So did Phaeton, hunched over his secondary terminal with his face lit blue from the diagnostic readout. So did Trelvin, leaning against the rear bulkhead with his arms crossed and his eyes fixed on the main screen. 200,000 kilometers away, the Zelix vessel held position. It was small, shuttle-sized. Its hull was smooth amber with no visible weapons ports. It had been broadcasting the same message for 3 hours. Deianira did not need to look at the translation screen again. She had memorized the words, state identity and intent. This space is restricted. Do not advance. She tapped her thumb against her ring finger. Once, twice, 3 times. The ceramic bead in her earring swung forward and clicked against the console. "Phaeton," she said, "give me something I can use." He did not turn around. His hands moved across the terminal, pulling up schematics she had seen 100 times. The void sail module looked like a cage of black crystal filaments. It caught no light. It returned nothing. 6 days, he said. Minimum. The last jump collapsed the primary resonator. I've been rebuilding it from spare waveguide segments and hope. Conventional thrust. Enough for station keeping, maybe a course correction if we needed one, but we burned most of the reaction mass coming through the outer system. He paused. We're not going anywhere. Trelvin made a sound, not quite a laugh, something drier. So we sit here, he said, and we wait for them to decide what we are. Deianira did not answer him. She looked at the young officer at the communication station. Baran, 22 years old. She had lost her family on the Persephone and she had not cried once in Deianira's presence. Her voice was steady now. "Ensign," Deianira said, "open a channel." Baran's hands moved over the board. "Channel open. They'll receive on all standard consulate frequencies." Deianira straightened. She touched her earring once, a habit she had never been able to break, and she spoke into the pickup. "This is Deianira Aurin, Senior Logistics Coordinator for the Ariadne Remnant. We are refugees. Earth is gone. We entered this zone because our navigation systems failed and we had no alternative course of action. We request safe passage and communication with the nearest consulate authority." She stopped. The recording light blinked twice and went dark. "Send it," she said. Baran sent it. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of things that were not being said. The proximity alarm kept pulsing. The amber light kept burning. Phaeton kept working because that was what he did when he was afraid. 27 minutes. Deianira counted every one of them. When the reply came, it was not the same voice. The translation system rendered it as a dry rustle, like leaves being crushed underfoot. "You are inside a containment barrier. You will hold position and await inspection. Any unauthorized movement will be interpreted as hostile intent." The channel closed. Trelvin pushed off the bulkhead. "There it is, trapped, no weapons, no way out, and they're coming to look at us." "You have a better idea?" Deianira asked. "I have an honest assessment. We're at their mercy, and we don't even know what mercy looks like to a species that draws borders around empty space." Deianira turned back to the display. The Zelix vessel had not moved. It was waiting, watching. She could feel the weight of its attention like a pressure against her skull. She made the decision in the space between 2 heartbeats. "Baran," she said, "compile our full system schematics, everything, power distribution, hull layout, life support, the void sail module." Phaeton's hands stopped moving. "Send it to them," Deianira said. "Full transparency, no redactions." Baran hesitated. "Ma'am, that includes." "I know what it includes. Send it." The ensign's hands moved again. Data began to transfer across the display in a long, unbroken stream. Deianira watched it go and felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief, something smaller, something that might become relief if they survived the next few hours. Phaeton looked up from his terminal. He met her eyes across the cramped bridge. The blue light from his screen made his face look hollow. He did not argue. He did not say anything at all. He just nodded once. Deianira understood what that nod cost him. The void sail was the only thing he had ever built, the only thing that made him valuable, the only reason the groveship had survived this long. He had given it to her without a word. The trust was heavier than the responsibility. "We'll get it back," she said, quietly for him. "I know," he said. He did not sound like he believed it. The main display flickered. Baran's voice cut through the silence, higher now, the steadiness cracking at the edges. "Ma'am, the inspection vessel is moving." Deianira's eyes snapped to the screen. The small amber ship was changing course. It was coming toward them. Slowly, deliberately, a predator that had all the time in the world. "It's not alone," Baran said. The display updated. A second vessel emerged from behind the local gas giant. It was larger, much larger. Its hull was the same smooth amber, but its shape was wrong, elongated, asymmetrical, studded with projections that the groveship's limited sensors could not identify. Weapons signatures. The display flagged them. Unknown type, unknown yield, no data available for threat assessment. Trelvin let out a long breath. There it is. Phaeton stood up from his terminal. He walked to stand beside Deianira. He did not touch her. He just stood there, shoulder to shoulder, looking at the screen. The larger vessel kept coming. The warmth of the chamber pressed against Kastek's carapace like a living body breathing beside him. He had played the human transmission 3 times now. Each pass stripped away another layer of noise, another artifact of their crude compression algorithms, and left the same thing behind. A voice, female, stressed. He isolated the waveform and ran it through the stress analysis subroutine. The chemical equivalent markers spiked hard. Cortisol, adrenaline, the human body under sustained pressure, the kind that broke lesser species into panic or surrender. But the words themselves did not match. She did not plead. Her sentences were short, declarative. She offered their schematics like a merchant laying goods on a counter, not a refugee begging for mercy. The disconnect between her biology and her behavior was a knot Kastek could not pull apart. He turned his attention to the schematics. The human vessel was primitive by any consulate standard. Patchwork life support, propulsion systems that belonged in a museum. The hull was a collage of salvaged metal and welded repairs, each seam a confession of desperation. This ship had been dying for a long time. But the central spine held something else. Kastek zoomed in on the energy signature. It did not match any known human technology. It did not match any consulate technology either. The reading was a void, a space where energy should have been but was not. An absence with shape. He was still staring at it when the door irised open. Zillion Thren entered with their characteristic slowness, each limb placed as if stepping across sacred ground. The pale blue of their carapace caught the orange light and turned it muddy. Their shortened antenna twitched once. Irritation. "Preliminary threat assessment," Zillion said. The words were flat. A command, not a question. Kastek did not turn from the display. "Low risk. The vessel is primitive. Their weapons are point defense only, designed for debris, not combat. They have no offensive capability that would concern the consulate." And the anomaly. Kastek's left midsection limb twitched. He forced it still. Unidentified. The energy signature in their central spine does not correspond to any known system. But it is not military. The emissions profile is passive. It absorbs power rather than generating it. Zillion stepped closer. The warmth of their body joined the warmth of the wall, and the chamber felt smaller. Human ships are not supposed to exist in this region. The Procyon exclusion zone was established 300 years ago. Nothing has breached it since. Kastek turned to face them. "I am aware." "Then you understand the concern." Zillion's mandibles curled. "Either they have extraordinary luck or they possess a capability we do not understand. Both possibilities are unacceptable for a diplomatic incident." Kastek considered his next words carefully. The warmth of the chamber was beginning to feel oppressive. "I request permission to perform a direct interface. Connect our diplomatic node to their communication system for chemical data exchange." Zillion paused. The air between them grew still. "Direct contact carries risk," Zillion said. "It also carries clarity. The schematics are incomplete. Their transmission is scrambled through translation layers. If I can interface directly, I can read their chemical markers, their scent traces, their emotional truth. The data will be clean." Zillion's antennae lowered slowly. "Approval, but you will be the only point of contact. No secondary channels, no delegation. If this goes wrong, it goes wrong with you and no one else." Kastek dipped his thorax in acknowledgement. "Understood." He moved to the diplomatic node. The console was a smooth, organic curve that pulsed with a low amber glow beneath the surface. He pressed his forelimb to the contact plate and felt the node connect to his nervous system through the chitin. A brief warmth. Then the data stream opened. He sent the formal greeting in standard trade language. He followed it with a series of cultural queries: origin world, social structure, technological base, number of surviving vessels. Standard protocol. The same questions every first contact specialist had asked for centuries. The human response arrived in fragments. The trade language they used was broken. It was full of loanwords from a dozen sources Kastek could not identify. The grammar was inverted. The syntax was a wreck. Whoever had taught these humans the trade tongue had learned it from recordings or ghosts. Their origin world was specified as Earth. Kastek paused. He ran the word through every database on the node. Nothing. No star system, no colony designation, no planetary registry. Earth was a blank. He sent a follow-up query requesting coordinates. The response was a single sentence. The home system was lost. Kastek read the sentence 4 times. Then he read it again. The chemical data release from the transmission carried a faint scent of ozone and bitter root, the smell of active negotiation, of information being shaped for transmission. But beneath it was something else. A thin metallic tang that his translators had no label for. Grief, the node had no category for it, but Kastek recognized it anyway. An entire species stripped of its origin. The concept was so alien to Zelix's experience that his processing stalled. The Zelix had never lost a homeworld. They had never been scattered. Their history was a single unbroken line written in the walls of their ancestral cities. The idea that a species could continue after losing everything, that they could still speak, still transmit, still refuse to plead, was not a data point he had ever been asked to analyze. He restarted the analysis program. The data corrupted on the second pass. He restarted it again. Behind him, Zillion said, "Report." Kastek turned slowly. "The humans are refugees," he said. "Their homeworld is gone. They have no primary system. They are fleeing a catastrophe I cannot identify from their records." Zillion's antennae went rigid. "Gone." "Gone," Kastek let the word hang. "They did not provide coordinates. The name they gave does not appear in any database. They are a species without an origin." The silence that followed was the longest of Kastek's career. When Zillion spoke again, their voice was quieter. "That is not possible. A species cannot survive the loss of its homeworld. The cultural structure collapses, the identity fragments. They would not be capable of organized flight." "They are capable," Kastek said. "I have their voice on record. She is stressed. She is terrified, but she is negotiating." Zillion stood motionless for a long moment. Then they said, "Continue the interface." Kastek turned back to the node. He looked at the data read rotating slowly in the center of the room, its polished surface catching the orange light. He thought about the woman whose voice he had analyzed. He thought about the ship that should not have been flying. Then he transmitted a new message. He requested permission to come aboard the human vessel in person, face to face. The data was incomplete. The chemical markers were ambiguous. He needed to see them. He needed to breathe their air and watch their movements and understand what kind of species could lose everything and keep flying. Zillion objected. The objections were procedural. Kastek overrode them using his technical authority as the lead cultural specialist. The message was sent. He waited. His mandibles were still. The warmth of the chamber pressed against his carapace. The data read turned slowly in the orange light. He waited for an answer. The airlock hummed with recycled air and something else. Ammonia, faint and sharp, cutting through the familiar smell of human sweat and ship steel. Deianira kept her palms open at her sides and watched the alien walk toward her. Kastek moved with a deliberate grace. His amber exoskeleton caught the harsh emergency light and threw it back in streaks of dark gold. He stopped 4 meters away and raised his forelimbs. His mandibles parted wide, exposing a soft membrane of pale tissue beneath. Deianira heard someone behind her suck in a breath. A foot shifted backward. She held still. The posture looked like a strike, a predator opening its throat before a lunge, but Kastek held it unmoving and she forced herself to see the patience in it. He was waiting. She raised her right hand, palm open, fingers flat, the most universal gesture she knew. Kastek's 4 eyes tracked the motion, his head tilted. Then he raised one forelimb and spread the digits, but his anatomy could not flatten them the way a human hand could. The limb curled instead, hook-like, the membrane between the joints stretching taut. It looked like a claw preparing to grip. Deianira lowered her hand slowly. Kastek lowered his forelimb. The translator on Phaeton's tablet crackled. Kastek's voice emerged as a dry rustle crushed leaves in a high wind. Your greeting, I cannot match it. My apology. Deianira nodded. Apology accepted. I am Deianira Aurin. I lead this vessel. More crackling, Kastek's mandibles clicked once, twice, small stones striking each other. You are the one who spoke before, the stressed female. Your cortisol, a pause, the translator searching for a word. Your pressure chemical is elevated still. Trelvin muttered something behind her. She ignored him. I am nervous, she said. This is important. I want to get it right. Kastek's head rotated, bringing all four eyes to bear on her. Nervous, yes, that is a concept we have, but we do not express it during negotiation. It signals weakness. Then you'll have to forgive us, Deianira said. We're new at this. The translation took 4 passes before Kastek's posture shifted. He extended his data read, holding it before him like an offering. The woven chitin gleamed under the lights. You have entered the Procyon exclusion zone, he said. This area is restricted. State your reason for violation. Deianira took a breath. She had rehearsed this conversation a dozen times in her head. It had never sounded right. It still did not. Our home system is gone. Earth. We don't have a planet anymore. We're scattered. This ship is one of the largest remaining. We were trying to navigate to a settlement zone and our navigation systems failed. We drifted across your line before we could correct. Kastek's mandibles clicked. Once, twice, 3 times. Your ship, it cannot correct its own course. It's damaged. Damaged how? We don't have the materials to repair every system. We picked the critical ones. Navigation apparently wasn't critical enough that day. She meant it as dry humor. The translator rendered it as a statement of fact. Kastek processed it in silence. You did not have materials, he repeated. Your vessel is incomplete. Yes. That is not a ship. That is a failure waiting to happen. Phaeton stepped forward before she could respond. His hands were trembling slightly, but his voice was steady. It's a ship we kept alive for 37 years. We lost the Persephone 6 months ago. 90,000 people. We don't have the luxury of building new ones. We keep what we have. Kastek's gaze shifted to Phaeton. The translator hummed. Persephone, Kastek said. That word is not in our database. It was a colony vessel. It had a void sail module like ours. We tried to jump it to a new system and it didn't survive the transition. The word caught. Kastek's antennae straightened. Void sail module, you possess one. Phaeton glanced at Deianira. She gave him a small nod. Yes, it's attached to the central spine. Pre-human origin. Yes. Kastek's mandibles moved faster now. The clicking became a steady rhythm. You are in possession of technology you do not understand. Technology that is older than your species, and you activated it. We didn't know what it would do. We learned. You lost a vessel, 90,000 lives, and you call that learning. The room went cold. Trelvin's arms tightened across his chest. Deianira could feel the crew behind her shifting, angling, ready to close ranks. Phaeton did not back away. He set his tablet down on the deck. The sound echoed. Then he stepped directly in front of Kastek, close enough that the alien's exoskeleton was within arm's reach. I was 12 years old when my mother died, Phaeton said. He spoke slowly in standard, letting the translator catch every word. She was a doctor on Meridian Station, a radiation leak. The evacuation was chaotic. She stayed behind to help people get to the shuttles. She knew it would kill her. She did it anyway. Kastek did not move. I study old technology because I want to understand it, Phaeton said. Because if I understand it, I can make it safe. I can make sure no one else has to die that way. Not my people, not anyone else's. He stopped. His hands were still trembling. He did not try to hide them. Kastek's mandibles were silent. The translator hummed. No words came. Kastek stared at Phaeton for a long moment. Then he lowered his data read. I cannot process this, he said. Not without consultation. I must return to my vessel. He turned and walked back toward the outer airlock door. The seal cycled. The door opened. He stepped through without looking back. The airlock was quiet. The ammonia smell faded. Deianira watched the door close and felt the shape of the misunderstanding shift beneath her feet. It was not over. It had only changed. She did not know what form it would take next. The warmth of Kastek's quarters was a lie. It pressed against his carapace, soft and artificial, while the recording played on his internal display for the 7th time. He watched the human male step forward. Phaeton. The name meant nothing in the structures of standard trade language, but the emotions beneath the words meant everything. The human spoke of his mother dying on a station called Meridian. Kastek ran the fragment through his analytical suite. Cortisol markers, pupil dilation, micro-tremors in the vocal cords. The data was clean, no suppression, no fabrication, no rehearsal. The human believed every word he said. Kastek played it again. The station collapsed. The mother stayed behind. The child watched. He forced his mandibles to still. The emotional analysis algorithms all returned the same verdict: veracity at 97% confidence. The remaining 3% was simple signal noise. He pulled up the broader human packet. Fragmented ship schematics, a history of repeated relocation, no homeworld coordinates because there was no homeworld. Earth was a name without a location. The humans had been running for so long that their own origin had become a myth. And somehow in that running, they had found a void sail module. Kastek's antennae flicked. The artifact was pre-human. That was beyond dispute. The design principles matched nothing in the consortia database. The energy signature was an absence, a hole in the fabric of normal space. The humans had attached it to their generation vessel and learned to use it through trial and error. They had lost 90,000 people learning. He closed the recording. The orange glow of his quarters painted the data read on the mat, shifting across its woven surface like liquid metal. He had spent his entire career reading patterns. This one was unmistakable. The humans were not hiding a weapon. They were hiding their own desperation. The internal comm chimed. Zillion Thren's voice came through, clipped and precise. A rustle of dry leaves pressed into words. Kastek, I require your formal assessment. The consulate has flagged the exclusion zone breach. They want a classification within the next cycle. Kastek's forelimbs moved to the data read. He touched its surface, feeling the ridges of his own shed chitin baked into the weave. The read contained his preliminary notes, impressions, questions, nothing final yet. I am compiling the report now, he sent back. Define the scope, threat or anomaly. He hesitated. The correct answer was obvious. Standard protocol for a species that breached a quarantine zone was containment. The humans would be relocated to a consulate processing station. Their ship would be impounded. Their technology would be disassembled for study. They would be specimens, biological curiosities, a data point in a long history of first contacts. He thought of Phaeton's face. 12 years old, watching his mother die. Kastek did not know what that felt like. Zelix young did not bond with their parents in the same way. The molt was a solitary process. The connection between parent and offspring was chemical, not emotional. He had the theory, but not the experience. Still, the image would not leave his processing. I recommend further study, he sent. The artifact requires direct examination. The biological specimens are low risk. Zillion's response took 3 seconds. The silence was loud. Classify as containment protocol. Standard procedure. You have my authorization. Kastek's forelimbs trembled. A stress response. He had not felt this since his juvenile molt, when his new carapace had not yet hardened and every movement was a risk. He touched the data read again. Then he deleted the preliminary report. He composed a new one. He classified the humans as a culturally displaced pre-spaceflight remnant. The designation was obscure, rarely used. It triggered a different set of protocols entirely: protection, assistance, resettlement. The consulate would be obligated to treat the humans as refugees, not specimens. It was a lie. It was also the only thing that would save them. He transmitted the falsified report before he could change his mind. The data read hummed as the signal left his quarters. The orange glow flickered once as the ship's systems adjusted to the transmission load. Then he opened a private channel to the human vessel. The connection took 4 seconds. The human female's voice came through, wary and tired. Deianira. Kastek spoke before he could hesitate further. I have misjudged you. Your people, your situation. The data I have reviewed does not support the initial threat assessment. Silence from the human side. He continued, I am requesting permission to continue dialogue without consulate oversight. I believe you are telling the truth. I believe your species is what you claim to be, refugees, not threats. The silence stretched. 40 seconds. Kastek counted each one. His antennae flattened against his head. He had broken protocol. He had falsified a report. He had committed an act that could end his career, strip his caste rank, and potentially trigger a consulate investigation into his own fitness. And he did not fully understand why. The image of Meridian Station burned in his memory. He had never been there. He had never seen a human before today. But the child's face, the child's truth, had entered his processing and would not leave. He did not have a name for what he was feeling. That lack of a name disturbed him more than the breach of protocol. The channel crackled. Deianira's voice returned, quiet and steady. "We accept, thank you." 3 words. Kastek lowered his forelimbs. The trembling had stopped. He looked at the data read on the mat. The orange light shifted across its surface. He had just made himself responsible for an entire species. He did not know if he was capable of carrying that weight. But he had already lifted it anyway. The containment field hummed through Phaeton's chest, a subsonic pressure that set his teeth on edge. He ran his hand over his scalp, feeling the short bristle of hair, and stared at the diagnostic display. The numbers were wrong. The void sail hung in the center of the engineering bay, a cage of black crystal filaments that drank the light around them. Each strand was thinner than a human hair. Each strand carried enough energy to vaporize this compartment if the containment collapsed. The module was pulsing, the field fluctuating in rhythm with something Phaeton could not identify. He tapped the display. The fluctuation pattern shifted. He tapped it again. "Your readings are abnormal," Kastek said. The Zelix's image sat on a portable screen propped against a tool bench. His mandibles clicked in that dry, crushed-leaf rhythm Phaeton was learning to read as concentration. The translation gap had narrowed over the past 2 cycles. They had both learned to strip their sentences down to the bone. "The field is resonating with something in local space," Phaeton said. "I cannot find the source." Kastek's 4 eyes tracked across the screen, processing. The consulate's instruments show no anomalous emissions within 500,000 kilometers. Phaeton shook his head. He stepped closer to the void sail module, close enough to see the individual filaments trembling in their mounts. The hum deepened a half step, and he felt it in his molars. "Your instruments are not inside this room," he said. Kastek went quiet. That was something Phaeton had learned to recognize too, the silence of a being who was thinking, not a silence of dismissal. The Zelix tilted his head, exposing the soft membrane under his forelimbs, the species equivalent of openness. "We have identified the artifact," Kastek said. "Its origin." Phaeton's hand froze halfway to his scalp. He lowered it slowly. "Tell me." "The structure matches records from a species we call the Makers, a precursor civilization. They disappeared 40,000 of your years ago. Only 3 intact Makers artifacts are known to exist in consulate space." Kastek paused. "The void sail is now the 4th. Phaeton turned from the module. He faced the screen directly. "You have seen 3 of these before." "We have seen their structures, yes. None function. The consulate's best xenotechnologists have spent centuries trying to activate them." Kastek's mandibles clicked once sharp. "Your ship operates a living Maker's device. That is why the border protocols flagged your approach. Nothing in consulate space produces that energy signature. Only the artifacts match the profile, and they do not produce it anymore." Phaeton heard the door cycle open behind him. He did not turn. He knew the footfall, the slight drag on the right side, the careful weight distribution. "You are telling him the good news," Deianira said. She crossed the engineering bay, her scar catching the low light. She looked tired. She always looked tired. But there was something lighter in the set of her shoulders, a tension she had carried for days that had finally eased. "The second consulate vessel withdrew," she said. "Kastek's report was accepted. We have a window." "How long?" Phaeton asked. Deianira leaned against a conduit bank. 2 standard cycles. The consulate runs audits every 2 cycles. When the audit finds the discrepancy, they will send a full survey team. 60 days, Kastek said. More precisely, 58 of your standard days from this moment. Phaeton looked back at the void sail. The filaments pulsed almost imperceptibly. 58 days, maybe enough time to learn something, maybe not. "I have a question," Phaeton said. Kastek waited. "Why did the Makers build it?" The silence stretched. Deianira shifted her weight. The hum of the void sail pressed against Phaeton's chest, steady and patient. "It is not a weapon," Phaeton continued. I have run every scan I can think of. There is no output path for kinetic force, no focused energy delivery, no payload deployment mechanism. Agreed, Kastek said. It is not propulsion, not in any sense that fits our models. It creates a localized space-time distortion, but the vector of the distortion is not directional. It does not push. It does not pull. It just... Phaeton spread his hands. Open something. The consulate has no answer, Kastek said. After centuries of study, we have no theory that fits the data. The makers built structures that serve purposes we cannot recognize. We assume the artifacts were tools for a technology we have not developed. Weapons, power sources, transportation nodes. He paused. We have no certainty. Phaeton looked at the module, at the filaments that caught no light, at the cage that should not work but did. You think it is a message, Kastek said. The words landed in the room. Phaeton felt Deianira's gaze on him. He did not meet it. I think it is something built to speak to someone who would come after them, Phaeton said. Not a tool, not a weapon, a signal, a question maybe, or an answer. Kastek made a sound Phaeton had never heard from a Zelix. A low hum, sustained, resonant. It vibrated through the speaker of the portable screen, and Kastek's mandibles were parted and his eyes were fixed. That interpretation has never been considered, Kastek said. In 400 years of study, across 7 academic generations of the consulate's best minds, no one proposed that the artifacts might be communicative rather than functional. Phaeton waited. It is possible, Kastek said, that you see something we cannot, because you are looking at the artifact from a different angle. He paused. Desperation is not a perspective the consulate has ever brought to Maker's study. Deianira let out a breath that was almost a laugh. First time being desperate made us useful. Phaeton ignored her. He was looking at the void sail, and something was moving in his mind. A thought that had been forming since he first touched the module's casing, since the Persephone died. A thought he had never put into words. Let us say it is a message, Phaeton said. A message implies a recipient, someone it was meant for. Kastek's mandibles clicked. The makers disappeared 40,000 years ago. There is no record of a recipient species. There would not be, Phaeton said, if the recipient had not arrived yet. Kastek went still, completely still. A Zelix at rest did not move, and Kastek looked more like a statue than a living being. His breath, if he breathed, was invisible. What are you suggesting? Kastek said. Phaeton turned from the void sail. He faced the screen. His heart was beating fast, and he did not know why. What if we are not supposed to find the destination? Phaeton said. What if we are supposed to become the destination? Deianira straightened. Phaeton. Think about it, Phaeton said. He was not looking at her. He was looking at Kastek's 4 eyes, and he saw something in them he had never expected to see from an alien. Uncertainty. The makers built something that opens a space, Phaeton said. A space that goes nowhere, a message with no recipient, unless the recipient is something that does not exist yet. He touched the casing of the void sail module. The hum rose through his palm. Unless they built it to be completed, by whoever came after. Kastek's voice was quiet, a dry rustle. You are proposing that the artifact is incomplete. I am proposing that we are the missing piece. The hum of the void sail deepened. The filaments trembled. The containment field flickered on the diagnostic display, and Phaeton felt the pulse in his chest like a second heartbeat. And the module began to change. The warning lights cycled with a precision that felt deliberate. Red, pause, red, pause. The interval was exactly 1.7 seconds, and Kastek found himself counting them despite himself. His carapace was slick where stress fluids had seeped from the joints. The air was cold and thin, laced with the sharp tang of recycled emergency oxygen. It tasted like fear. Phaeton was bent over the void sail console, his face illuminated by a bank of red indicators. His hands moved across the display, each gesture sharp and economical. He did not look up when Kastek entered. The containment field is destabilizing, Phaeton said. His voice was flat, controlled. Cascade failure in the primary lattice. I have 90 minutes before the module tears a hole in the hull. Kastek's mandibles clicked. 90 minutes is not enough time to evacuate the ship. It's not enough time to do anything. Phaeton tapped a sequence into the console. The high-pitched whine from the void sail filaments rose half a note. It made Kastek's teeth ache. I can't shut it down. It's not responding to any shutdown commands. Deianira appeared in the doorway. Her face was pale, the scar on her jaw standing out white against her skin. She did not ask what was happening. She had heard the whine, seen the lights, felt the vibration in the deck plates. She moved to stand beside Phaeton and looked at the display. "Can you shut it down?" she asked. "No." "Can you stabilize it?" Phaeton was silent for a long moment, then he shook his head. "The module is not malfunctioning, it's activating on its own." Kastek felt the words land in his thorax like a physical blow. He pressed his data read to the translator node on his forearm and ran a spectral analysis of the ship's ambient electromagnetic field. The pattern was there. A repeating pulse, low frequency, modulated with a cryptographic signature he had seen once before in the consulate archives. "The Makers." "It is responding to a signal," Kastek said. His voice rasped, the dry-leaf rustle of his species under stress. "The Void Sail module is not failing. It is aligning itself with a transmission." Deianira turned to face him. "What transmission?" Kastek pulled the data read from the node and held it up so they could see the waveform displayed on its polished surface. "A repeating pulse. It originates from inside the exclusion zone, approximately 200,000 kilometers from our current position." "There's nothing inside the zone," Phaeton said. "We scanned it, empty space." "There is a structure." Kastek's mandibles clicked again, faster this time. "A Maker's facility. The consulate has known about it for centuries. It was considered inert." "It is not inert," Deianira said. It was not a question. "It is not inert," Kastek confirmed. "The Void Sail is a key. It was designed to open a path to the facility. The cascade failure is the module locking onto the signal. It is trying to establish a connection." The whine from the filaments climbed another half note. The floor trembled. Kastek could feel the vibration through his feet, a deep thrumming that traveled through the ship's structure and into his exoskeleton. It was the sound of something waking up. Phaeton straightened. He turned to face Deianira, and Kastek saw something in his eyes that he had not seen before. Certainty. "I can stabilize the module," Phaeton said. "If I reroute power from the main reactor, but it will leave the ship with minimal life support. No gravity, no environmental control beyond the engineering bay. We'll be breathing bottled air and hoping the heaters hold." Deianira did not hesitate. "Do it." "Deianira." "Do it, Phaeton." Phaeton nodded. He turned back to the console and began typing. The whine from the filaments changed pitch, became a harmonic chord that resonated in Kastek's chest. The floor trembled harder. The lights dimmed once, twice, and then held steady at half brightness. But they did not go out. "Stabilized," Phaeton said. "For now, the conduit is open. The module is establishing a link." Kastek looked at the navigation display. A new point had appeared, marked with coordinates that did not correspond to any known stellar object. The Maker's facility, and something was coming out of it. "Deianira," Kastek said, "you need the facility's coordinates. I am transmitting them now." He pressed his data read to the console node. The information flowed into the ship's navigation system in a burst of translated data. Coordinates, approach vectors. A warning buried in the transmission that Kastek had never seen before. The facility was not just a structure, it was a door. And something on the other side was pushing back. Kastek made a decision. He opened a second channel, a direct transmission to the consulate, encrypted with his personal authentication key. He did not know if it would arrive in time. The signal would have to cross 200,000 kilometers of empty space, pass through the exclusion zone's disruption field, and reach a relay buoy that might or might not still be functional. He sent it anyway. The message was short. It contained his confession, his falsified report, and his warning. The humans were not a threat. The Maker's facility was not inert. The quarantine breach had been a mistake. His mistake. The transmission went out into the dark. On the navigation display, the point of light that was the Maker's facility grew brighter. The Void Sail filaments ceased their high-pitched whine and fell silent. The vibration in the floor stopped. The silence was worse. Phaeton stepped back from the console. His hands were shaking. He pressed them against his thighs to still them. "The link is established," he said. "The module is holding, but I don't know what it's connected to." Deianira looked at the display. Then she looked at Kastek. "What's coming out of that facility?" Kastek had no answer. He looked at the data read in his hand and saw the transmission pattern changing. The pulse was accelerating. The signature was evolving. It was no longer a simple cryptographic handshake. It was a response, and it was not friendly. The navigation bridge was cold enough that Deianira saw her own breath ghost across the display. She had not moved from her position in 30 minutes. The cup of rationed tea in her hand had gone cold an hour ago. She held it anyway. The warmth had been real once, and she needed to remember what that felt like. The main display showed the maker's facility. A geometric structure the size of a small moon rotated at a stately pace. Its surface was covered in black crystal filaments identical to the void sail module attached to the groveship's spine. The same nothing light, the same impossible geometry. It turned in perfect silence, and the silence felt heavier than any transmission ever could. Phaeton slumped at the engineering station. His face was gray. He still wore the heat gloves from his repairs, and his fingers twitched occasionally. Trelvin leaned against the rear bulk wall with his arms crossed. He watched the display and said nothing. That meant he had nothing optimistic to contribute. Castex stood at the communication station with his data read extended. The woven chitin rod reflected the emergency lighting in shifting patterns. His mandibles worked silently. The first sign of change was a shift in the static. The ambient noise from the communication array dropped by half. The hiss of empty space became a softer hiss. Something had stepped between the ship and the rest of the universe. Then the transmission arrived. It appeared on the main display as a sequence of numbers. Deianira recognized the first value instantly. Pi. The second was the fine structure constant. The third was the speed of light in a vacuum. The sequence continued. Each value was more fundamental than the last. It built toward something she could feel in her chest but could not name. Castex's mandibles clicked in a rapid pattern. Processing. He said, "The facility is asking a question." Deianira turned to face him. "What question?" "It is showing us the constants that define physical reality as we understand it." He paused. "It wants to know if we recognize these values, if we understand what they mean." Phaeton sat up slowly. His joints popped. He said, "What happens if we answer wrong?" Castex hesitated. His 4 eyes tracked across the data read, then back to the display. "I do not know. The consulate never got this far. No species entering the exclusion zone activated a void sail. We contained the artifacts. We never attempted communication." Trelvin spoke from the bulk wall. His voice was flat. "So we are the first. Great. That never ends badly." Deianira ignored him. She watched Phaeton. He had that look on his face, the same look he got before suggesting something that might kill them all. He said, "The void sail is a message. I told you this. A device built to speak." Castex nodded. "You said this. So the answer has to be a message too." Phaeton tapped his console. His fingers moved with long practice. "We cannot send them language. They speak math, not language. So we send them math, but not just any math. We send them something that says who we are." Deianira said, "What do you propose?" Phaeton did not answer immediately. He worked. His display scrolled through data sequences too fast to track. Then he stopped. He looked up. "The human genome, the chemical structure of our origin, base pairs, chromosomal mapping, the complete sequence of what makes us who we are." Silence on the bridge. Trelvin said, "You want to send them our DNA?" "Yes. That is insane." "It is honest." Phaeton turned to face Deianira. His eyes were tired but steady. "They asked if we understand the fundamental nature of reality. We answer by telling them the fundamental nature of us. It is not a weapon. It is not a threat. It is an introduction." Deianira looked at Castex. The Zelix tilted his head in a gesture of deep consideration. His mandibles moved slowly. Castex said, "I have no precedent for this, but I believe he is correct. The makers built their artifacts to be understood by species capable of abstract reasoning. A genome is the purest expression of a species' identity. It is a statement of existence." Deianira set down the cold cup of tea. She walked to Phaeton's station and looked at the data he had assembled. She said, "Send it." Phaeton pressed the transmission key. The signal left the groveship and crossed the gap between the vessel and the rotating facility. It was not fast. It was not dramatic. It was a narrow beam of information traveling at light speed, carrying the blueprint of every human who had ever lived. The facility received it. The display went blank for 30 seconds. No one on the bridge moved. Trelvin's breathing was audible in the silence. Phaeton's hands hovered over his console. Castex's data read flickered with recorded light. Then the display came back. The surface of the facility was changing. The black crystal filaments were realigning. A section of the structure face split along a seam. The seam had not been visible before. The two halves separated, rotating outward, revealing a tunnel of light so pure it made Deianira's eyes water. The tunnel was large enough to accommodate the groveship. It extended into the facility interior. She could not see the end. The light did not behave like normal light. It did not scatter. It did not illuminate the tunnel walls. It simply existed as a corridor of radiance leading to somewhere not quite here. Kastek's communication station chimed. He bent over it, his antennae stiffened. His mandibles opened wide and then closed again. He said, "That is a priority message from the consulate." Deianira turned. "What does it say?" Kastek did not look up. "My confession has been received. I am ordered to detain you and your crew. A consulate enforcement vessel is en route. It will arrive in 4 hours. The words settled on the bridge like a weight. Trelvin pushed off the bulk wall. 4 hours, enough time for them to board us and take everything we have learned. Deianira did not answer him. She watched Kastek. The Zelix had not moved from his station. His forelimbs rested on the data read. His 4 eyes were fixed on something she could not see. She waited. Kastek made a decision. She saw it happen. His mandibles clicked once, a sound of finality. He raised his forelimbs and exposed the soft membrane underneath, the gesture of a smile, the gesture of acceptance. He said, "I have been recording this encounter for the consulate archive. The archive is public. Once I upload the final segment, the consulate cannot suppress the data." He pressed a contact point on the data read. A light pulsed along its length, green, then gone. "It is done." His voice was a dry rustle. "The entire encounter, my falsified report, my confession, the transmission of your genome, the opening of the facility, all of it is now in the Galactic Public Archive. The consulate can detain me. They can revoke my caste. They can terminate my access to the network, but they cannot erase what I have witnessed." Deianira said, "You will face consequences." "Yes." "For helping us." "Yes." She looked at him. This creature she had met only days ago. This being who lied for them and falsified records and broke his own laws because he saw something in humans the protocols could not account for. She said, "Thank you." Kastek's mandibles moved. "I do not know if what I have done is correct, but I know the consulate answer to your species was not correct either. I would rather face judgment for compassion than live with the certainty of cowardice." Phaeton said, "The facility is stable. The tunnel is holding. I do not know how long it will stay open." Deianira walked to the navigation console. She pulled up the course plot. The groveship engines had barely enough fuel for a controlled approach. Life support ran on reserves. The ship was held together by Phaeton's repairs and the desperate hope that had carried them this far. She said, "All hands, prepare for transit. We are moving into the facility." Trelvin said, "We do not know what is in there." "No, we do not. We do not know if it is safe. We do not know if it is a trap. We do not know if we can come back." Deianira looked at him. There was nothing left in her voice but exhaustion and certainty. "This ship has been dying for 37 years. Every day we survive is a day we stole from the void. I am not going to stop stealing days now." She engaged the thrusters. The groveship groaned. The hull complained. The emergency lighting flickered as power was diverted to propulsion. The ship began to move, slowly at first, then with a steady, grinding purpose. Behind them, the communication array picked up a new signal. A vessel dropping out of FTL, close. Too close to intercept in time, but close enough to broadcast. The message came through on a standard consulate frequency. One repeating line. "Human vessel, do not proceed. You are in violation of consulate quarantine protocols. Halt your transit immediately." Deianira did not respond. The groveship crossed the threshold of the tunnel. The light surrounded them. It was not warm, it was not cold, it was a presence. A pressure against the hull felt almost like gravity, but was not gravity. The navigation display went white, then it went black, then it showed a schematic of the facility interior, corridors of crystal and emptiness, chambers the size of cities, structures whose purpose she could not begin to guess. Behind them, the tunnel closed. The consulate signal cut off. Silence, full and absolute. Deianira stood at the navigation console and looked at the display. The groveship was inside the Maker's facility. The ship was intact. The crew was alive. And somewhere deep in the crystal network, a pulse of light traveled between filaments. It carried no language. It carried no threat. It carried only acknowledgement, a single, ancient word waiting for a species to understand what it meant to arrive.